So yesterday I was finally able to watch Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon on the big screen. This was a 4K restoration for the film's 50th anniversary. I saw it at the Prince Charles Cinema in Leicester Square, which is one of the best cinemas in the United Kingdom, and well, it was obviously an amazing experience. This is, for me, one of the best films ever made. We follow an Irish rogue played by Ryan O'Neill as he drifts through various chapters of fortune and misfortune in 18th century Europe, you know, falling in love, fighting in wars, defecting from wars, constantly reinventing himself, and eventually climbing up the aristocratic European high society social ladder. The movie is just over 3 hours long, but is consistently engaging throughout, and I do think a lot of that is simply due to just how beautiful the thing looks. Seriously, what Kubrick and cinematographer John Alcott were able to achieve here is truly a mind-blowing feat. I mean, this is easily one of the best looking films ever made, and I don't even think that's like a controversial opinion. Whether it's the wide establishing shots of the countryside and elegant aristocratic buildings, or the intimate candlelit scenes using giant lenses gifted by NASA, or all those Hogarthian high society stills, especially in the film's second half, which straight up just look like oil paintings. The entire film has this utterly hypnotic look to it, and honestly, if the music wasn't so fitting and the story so engrossing, I genuinely think you could watch Barry Lyndon on mute, like a silent film, and still find the experience deeply enjoyable. And on top of all of this is of course a Stanley Kubrick film, people, arguably made at the peak of the guy's powers, meaning you're getting that incredibly idiosyncratic, surreal, detached tone that runs through so much of his work. We especially get so many of his trademark slow zooms here, which combined with the use of natural light and the meticulous period-accurate production and costume design, create an atmosphere that feels distinctly voyeuristic. The camera here feels as calculated and formal as the society and culture it's making us privy to, removing any traces of sentimentality or nostalgia from the historical setting, and instead presenting a version of the 18th century that feels eerily preserved. Kubrick really captures this world with a ghostly kind of inevitability, as if he's documenting a civilization already doomed to decay. And I couldn't not mention the pacing of this film as well, which is always for me going to be one of the most important factors of any movie, and which this film, despite its 185-minute runtime, absolutely nails. And yes, I think the intermission really helps with that. I do wish intermissions were still a thing for those longer movies, as it makes the watching experience feel more like an event, and is especially appreciated by those of us with smaller than average bladders. So yeah, Stanley Kubrick, the guy knew how to make good films. I think we're all in agreement there. However, the component of Barry Lyndon which I perhaps think about the most now, especially after this most recent rewatch, and the thing I want to discuss in this video, is just how hilarious the thing is. Now obviously when most people hear about Barry Lyndon, comedy isn't the first word that's gonna come to mind. At the end of the day, this is a slow-moving 3-hour period piece about a man who climbs his way up European society through seduction, war, deceit, and marriage. It's not exactly Pineapple Express, you know? And I'll be honest, while I really liked Barry Lyndon the first time I saw it back in 2019, I didn't really find much humour in it. No, I just sort of took it at face value and assumed it was intended as this straight-up period drama with a capital D. A very beautiful, very serious work of historical fiction. However, every time I would watch it again, I would find more and more humour just kind of hiding in plain sight. And this most recent rewatch, with a sold-out audience, kind of confirmed for me how truly hilarious the movie is. I mean, aside from a few of the more emotionally serious scenes, there were basically constant laughs from everyone for the entire 3-hour runtime. So, what's actually going on here? How is a film that on paper seems so serious and sincere, so preoccupied with jewels and decorum, be in actuality so funny? How did I not realize this on my first viewing? How does the humor become so much more overt every time I watch it? And has it gotten to the point where we can actually label this film a comedy? Just what in the world is going on? Well, one possible answer to these questions comes down to one of the film's main visual inspirations, the 18th century painter William Hogarth. Now, a lot's been said about how Barry Lyndon looks like a painting, and, well, it does. That's not just a throwaway observation. Kubrick explicitly modelled the film's aesthetic on Hogarth's work, and the resemblance is, of course, striking. But what sometimes tends to get overlooked is what Hogarth's paintings were actually doing. Because yes, while they were ornate, elegant, and highly detailed, they were also deeply satirical. Moral tales disguised as decorative art, skewering the pretensions of the upper class with this kind of sly observational wit. They're able to indulge in beauty while still critiquing it, effectively having their cake and eating it too. The compositions are stunning, the details immaculate, but they're also full of mockery. Drunken husbands, scheming lovers, collapsing fortunes. Hogarth's work invites you to marvel at the surface while quietly pointing to the rot underneath. And I would argue that Barry Lyndon, in a way, is doing the exact same thing. Yes, this movie contains some of the most beautiful frames ever put to film, and presents us with a genuinely moving and powerful story about class and desire and death and fear and love and all that good stuff. But at the same time, it kind of feels like Kubrick sees right through all of it. There's this pervading sense throughout that the movie is fully aware of its own ridiculousness and pompousness. And it's just fascinating to watch because I feel like most 18th century period pieces are gonna go one of two ways. Either they'll take themselves really seriously and play everything straight, or they're gonna be a complete parody. That's surely just the natural dichotomy when dealing with a genre and setting which is so specific, with a world that looks and feels and sounds so different to our own. But here, Kubrick is able to do something really quite impressive, basically playing both sides so he always comes out on top, leaving the audience in this constant state of confusion, as we wonder what the director's true intentions were and subsequently whether we should be taking the film seriously or not. Because yes, there are many moments throughout this film which are genuinely just sincere, dramatic scenes. Like when Barry is masquerading as a British lieutenant and has this brief but rather touching affair with a German woman. Or all the battle sequences which depict violence and death with a brutal stillness. And then, of course, there's the death that happens near the end of the film, which is a genuinely devastating moment, and which left many people in my audience in tears. But at the same time, the movie is really, really silly, is aware of that fact, and completely plays up to it. There are scenes in Barry Lyndon which straight up feel like they were plucked out of Monty Python's Flying Circus. For example, the scene near the beginning of the film where Barry is mugged by two polite Englishmen, or basically any moment in the movie's second half which depicts the high society of 18th century Europe with such exaggerated stiffness that it genuinely moves into live-action cartoon territory. One of my personal favourite territories. Again, Kubrick was clearly aware of how ridiculous this world is, and was able to find this balance, this incredibly delicate equilibrium between sincerity and satire, between reverence and ridicule. It's basically a 3-hour-long laugh at the absurdity of nobility when viewed from a modern perspective. But what makes it work so well is that it never breaks the illusion. The film is so committed to its historical setting, so exact in its formality and period accuracy, that the humour can't help but emerge from the truth rather than in spite of it. It's never played for laughs, which is exactly why it ends up being so funny. There's this constant, low-level irony running underneath everything. Not enough to make the whole thing collapse into parody, but just enough to let you know that Kubrick sees the cracks in the facade. And once you pick up on it, you start seeing it everywhere. In the way people walk and talk and dress, and in their facial expressions. I mean, honestly, every scene with Captain John Quinn, played by Leonard Rossiter, is just incredibly hilarious. And because we know how precise and intentional Kubrick was as a storyteller, it really does just make us interrogate the ridiculousness of the movie even more. Every moment or scene or line essentially makes us ask the question, am I allowed to laugh at this, or should I be watching it very seriously like Lenny from The Simpsons? And it's just a surreal experience. So, is Barry Lyndon a comedy? Well, personally, I think labeling pieces of art with specific genre tags is a little silly and redundant. I mean, there's definitely a place for that kind of thing, like if you're scrolling through a streaming service or Letterboxd or whatever, but Barry Lyndon is proof that some pieces of art just can't be classified like that. It is both a comedy and a tragedy. It is both completely sincere and also kind of a joke. And it's precisely that duality, that refusal to commit to one clear tone, which makes it so fascinating, and which makes it one of my personal favourite films of all time. But that's going to be it for this video. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please, if you haven't seen Barry Lyndon, go watch it. You'll see what I mean in terms of its tone and the way Kubrick was able to have his cake and eat it too. But anyway, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.